Please be seated. Back in the 90s, there was a movie called Hook with Robin Williams, the late great Robin Williams. One of my favorite movies. We only have it on VHS now, so we can't watch it anymore because we don't have a functioning VCR. But the boys are sort of outgrown it. However, we almost wore that movie out, the VHS on it. We watched it so many times. And one of the favorite scenes in there, at least for me, if you don't know the movie, Robin Williams plays Peter Pan, but Peter Pan who has grown up to become a corporate raider. And he has a family, 2 young kids, and he's just mean. And he doesn't pay attention to his kids. But they have to make a trip to London, and so they're flying on a plane, and his son has a baseball. This is something that would never be allowed on planes today. He's got a baseball, and he's throwing it up in the air in the plane, and his father says, "Quit behaving like a child." And the kid looks at him and says, "I am a child." Childish behavior is sort of innate. However, what I've noticed is that getting older doesn't necessarily change that. If I seem a little bit blurry-eyed, that's because we just had our youth group overnight last night. The kids are still in the parish hall sleeping, so go ahead and wake them up. But last night, after the fire warning subsided, it expired, we went into the backyard of the rectory and we had a little fun. We've got a fire pit there, we had a fire, and we gathered around it, and then they discovered the hammock, which is, one of those ones on a stand. And so they drag it over there, and then they played the game, how many teenagers can we get in a hammock? And then they played the game, how many teenagers can we swing as hard as we can without not toppling them all out of the hammock? And they were squealing and screaming and laughing, and I thought just having one in the house was bad. But even adulthood, I've discovered, does not inoculate one from childish behavior. I'm thinking back to my own teenage years and my own parents. And the day back in maybe 1978, I'm standing in the kitchen. I'm a mature junior in high school, of course. And my father, a rarity, is doing the dishes at the sink. My mother walks in with the 1970s version of a super sucker and starts blasting away. My father is prepared. He grabs the hose from the sink and starts spraying her. Now the entire kitchen is completely soaked, and they just keep going at it, and there's laughter and screaming, and all the kids running in there. And the place is a wreck. No regard for the damage they are doing to their own kitchen. If we had done that, they would have said, "What is this childish behavior?" Or worse. Now think about this. We call that childish behavior, and we associate behaving like a child very often with negative things. Making too much noise and being too silly, or doing things they shouldn't be doing in a dangerous place, or just wrecking the place. We associate it with immaturity, and often with irresponsibility, and just general goofiness and laziness. That's what we think of when we say, don't act like a child. And to a degree, there's validity in that. Children have to learn a lot. They have to grow up. Think about in Acts. Peter is talking with them, and he says, I know in your ignorance you didn't know what you were doing, really, when you crucified Christ. You're acting, what he wanted to say really is, you're acting out of ignorance, you're acting out of childishness. You are acting like those who don't know. And we do have to learn. We have to outgrow things. We have to mature. I don't believe, I hope I'm not making anybody upset by this, I don't think any of you believe in Santa Claus anymore. Why? Because you've outgrown it. You don't need that anymore. It's something for small children. At the nursery school we're going around right now, we're having an issue where over at earlier this year, the kids were talking about what Santa brought them for Christmas, and one of the little boys said, Santa Claus isn't real. We had that little conversation with the parents about, yeah, that may be true, but no, we're out of time. We don't have to have everything right now. But children outgrow a lot of the fantasies. And you can actually do that without losing the joy and wonder. But they do outgrow these things. And Peter was saying, it's time for you to outgrow some of your own fantasies, as it were, to grow up a little bit. It also means learning to trust the evidence in front of you. Remember the gospel where Jesus comes in and they won't believe that it's Jesus. Why? Well, you're not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be dead. He had to have them touch him and eat food. Which I love that. He says, you got anything? You got anything to eat? It's a great line. But the reason for that is to prove to them, to give them hard, solid evidence that this is what it is. So part of growing up means learning to distinguish from fantasy from reality, but learning to also trust the evidence. It means learning how to distinguish fact from fiction. It means learning how to be a discerning person. But not everything about being a child is a bad thing. One of the most endearing things about virtually every child in a reasonably healthy family is this idea, it's just knowledge that they belong. We actually have to sort of drive that out of people, that they don't belong. Innately, a child knows they are part of this family and they belong in that family, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be. They just are. There's this built-in trust. And the only reason that ever goes away is if the adults drive it out of them. And in Paul's letter, he says, you are God's children. And being part of God's children means you belong. You just belong. And you know that you belong. You are part of this family. Being part of the family doesn't mean there are no responsibilities. It doesn't mean there isn't learning going on. In fact, every time I have a family coming in, a young family coming in for baptism instruction, one of the first things I say is, they're watching you. Your children are watching everything you do. Despite their protestations that they can't stand school, they are always learning, and they will never stop learning unless that's driven out of them as well. They naturally learn. They naturally watch their parents, and they're learning from you. And I say to them, they will learn generosity or greed from you. Not by what you say, but what you do. They will learn to trust God from you, or not. Here's an example. Back when I was a kid, we had some kids who would be dropped off to church or Sunday school, and then the parents would go off for coffee or something like that. You know exactly the lesson that the kids learned. God is for kids. Coffee is for adults. Fortunately, we have coffee out of your church, so God and coffee are for adults. But the point is, we learn from our parents. I remember, I grew up in a really great neighborhood, and there was a guy next door it was sort of a house turned into an apartment house, and one of the guys there was this really old man who was slightly delusional a lot of the times, and he regularly came over to the house to sell junk to my father. You know, a weed whacker that hadn't worked in years. I can't even remember some of the junk, a broken lawn chair. And my dad would buy it. My mom hated it. But he bought all sorts of junk from this guy. And I asked He's broke. He's probably going to spend it on booze. I don't know what he's going to spend it on. But he's too proud to beg. I want him to feel like he's earning it. And so he's got this junk, he's selling it. That's it. Those are lessons that kids learn from their adults. So they're always learning. And it's always important for us to know we are being watched. So part of a child is this innate ability to learn. Something we should never forget and never stop. Part of the childishness is this understanding that we belong. And when God calls us our children, we belong. We just do. Part of being a child is also an innate generosity. Being part of the family means you want to help. I mean, sometimes as parents you can't stand it because they're underfoot. It takes 5 times as long to do the dishes when you've got a kid helping you. Let them help. You know this. Because it's not about the dishes. It's about the relationship that's being built. So kids have this desire to do, to be part of the family, to give of themselves. Those are the things that we as God's children can embrace. And there's this great line in Paul's letter. Did you see that? It says, we don't know what we're going to be yet. What a marvelous line. Because kids have this other innate ability to embrace the ambiguous, to embrace the mystery, just to not worry about what they're going to be. I'm me right now. That's good enough. And for us to embrace right now, I simply am a child of God. That's pretty good. Being a child always requires, and it is in fact, it's part of being a child, is to learn and to grow and to mature. But there are things we don't leave behind. There are parts of being a child, the joy, the wonder, the fun, the sense of belonging to the family, the generosity of spirit. Those are things we don't leave behind. So when Paul says, we are children, what he's saying is, we are heirs to the kingdom. So go ahead. Behave like children. But just don't throw a baseball in the airplane.